call the board meeting to order. It is for the purpose of a work session, and so I want to thank everyone that is here today in the building as well as those that are watching online. So, Madam Superintendent, with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, sir, and the first item on the agenda is to approve the agenda, Mr. Chair.
So we have a recommendation. Board, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor by raised hand? It is unanimous.
Thank you. Next section is superintendent's report, and the first thing that I would like to do is invite Dr. Connie Huff forward to talk about her program and to also review our procedures for McKinney-Vento, which is actually part of the regulation that it's reviewed annually with the board. Dr. Huff?
Okay, let's see if this thing's turned on and you can get to me today. There we go. Good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to be here with you this afternoon. Miss Jenny, if you'll roll on down. Our Student Services Department here at the district level is comprised of myself, Miss Lauren Payne, and Dr. Jackie Neal. Now, just because we're at the district level does not mean that we are not out working at the schools. That is our primary focus, is to make sure what goes on at the schools is taken care of as it should be. You can see up here the areas that fall into our realm. We have special education, Section 504, MTSS interventions, mental health supports, hospital homebound, social work, and counselors. When you look at each of these compartments, on that first screen they look small, but they're all very diverse and complex. For instance, the area of special education in our system of, what's our count now, Miss Jenny? Around 2,700 students. We have 522 students who are served in the special education department. And the purpose of the special education program is to make sure that these students who are anywhere from 3 years old to 22 years old get all the experiences that they are supposed to have to be able to go forth successfully out into the world. Now, that middle compartment there talks about the different eligibility categories. There are 13 of them in which you could qualify for special education services. And I'll show you a little bit more about that in just a moment. The bottom container outlines how many personnel within our system it takes to help us serve those 522 students. We have 44 and a quarter teachers, 19 and a half parapros, 5.2 speech and language pathologists, an occupational therapist, a physical therapist, an orientation mobility specialist, 2 and a quarter school psychologists, and 1 diagnostician. We also have 7 full-time special ed transportation bus drivers and another 3 gentlemen that help us with special routes. And those quarters and all of that, we're not hacking people up. Those are some folks that work part-time, or positions are divided out across people who serve other roles. And here I've got a little bit more information for you about our primary disability areas. You can see there that I've put some numbers down for each of the eligibilities. Now, those numbers aren't all spread out equally amongst the schools. This is from pre-K or even the 3-year-old program to those who are 22. And sometimes I'm not able to give you an exact number. You'll see several places on there it says fewer than 5 students, and that has to do with what we call protecting that personally identifiable information. Our next screen is another program that supports students to make sure that they are able to do all they can and that they are not hindered in their learning by their disabilities or their medical conditions, and that's our Section 504. Section 504, like special education, is another one that comes to us from the federal government and gives us some parameters about making sure that these people are not discriminated against and they get the services they need. Now, in our system, we have 162 students who are served under a 504 plan, and that can be for a variety of reasons. It can be something as simple as having nut allergies, that you have to have certain things go on, being a diabetic, having ADHD, anxiety. There's a long list of things that could necessitate that plan. Now, when it comes to how this plan is put into action, you have your regular classroom teachers who have those responsibilities for making sure that the students get their accommodations. And the program is overseen at the school level by an assistant principal. Our next category that we talk about here is not a federally mandated thing, although nationally you have what we call MTSS or RTI in all of our states. Miss Heather Collis and I are co-chairs for our MTSS coordination here in the county. On my side of things, it's what's called Whole Child. The folks that work with me, Miss Lauren and Miss Jackie, they help us look at these 80 students who are in the schools that need some sort of supports for either speech or their behavior or their social emotional needs. And sometimes those things do branch over, but these aren't students who are necessarily special ed. These kids have a little bit of a skill gap, is what we call it, and they just need some time and attention paid to that skill gap to help make sure that they are able to do what their peers do in an acceptable manner. Or if they're not, then we do look to see if there is some sort of disability. The only piece of this that is legislated is our state has what we call an SST law for student support teams, and that does mean that we do some paperwork and what we call progress monitoring to make sure that we are doing what we need and our kids are growing with what we have put out there. And again, this is something where these interventions can be delivered by the classroom teachers, our intervention teachers, interventionists who are at the school, counselors, paraprofessionals. There are all sorts of people help to make this go forward. And then it is also overseen by folks at the school level. Miss Jenny. Another group that we get to talk about are our counselors. Each of our elementary schools does have one counselor. Our middle and high school, because of the number of students served there, do have 2 counselors. Now, I didn't put a ton of information up here, but that is certainly not because they don't do a ton of work, because these people do all sorts of things. So many things that it's hard to break it down to something that actually fits inside those bubbles. They're here to support with academics, career, and personal development. They do all sorts of different things. Our elementary folks help deliver our second step curriculum, which is that curriculum that helps make sure that our kiddos in the elementary school know how to behave, know what those behavioral expectations are. All of our counselors do anti-bullying education with the students. Then, of course, they do small group and individual supports and other things as far as academics and scheduling goes. This is a realm that is relatively new for us in that we have had an LCSW, licensed clinical social worker, in our system for about 4 or 5 years now. And that's Miss Sheena Reimer, and some of you are familiar with Miss Sheena and the good work that she does to make certain that we are meeting those mental health needs of our students across the district. And I did put a few numbers in there for you because this is an area that not everyone is as familiar with. When it comes to what Miss Sheena does, she oversees a couple of different types of plans for us. We have what are called safety plans, and those are when a student needs a little bit of extra supervision and we need to make sure that we know if they have harmed themselves or if they have potentially harmed others, and we're doing all we can to make certain that that doesn't occur during the regular school day or outside of the school day. She also helps us keep up with our reports of self-harm or the suicidal ideation. You'll see that number up there for reports of that nature that have gone in so far this year. I've also put up there the number of hospitalizations that we've had in the district this year for students who have self-harmed or have had suicidal ideation, because those are things that in the normal everyday today of things we don't necessarily realize that goes on. But she is helping us make certain that if it is occurring, that we are paying the attention to it that we need. And sometimes that means hooking somebody up with MTSS services so that they're getting interventions in the school, but also Ms. Sheena takes a lot of time to make sure that these kids have the counseling services outside of school. There are 2 days right now in our system, Tuesday and Thursday, that someone at Georgia Mountain Health works with her doing online services all day for different students who need that. So we've got about 30 students who are doing telehealth visits and another 40 that she's helped facilitate setting up going to the counselors for those visits. Social work. For 15 or 20 years now, we have had a couple of different people who have been social workers in our district. Miss Tara Cantrell has been one for a long time. I won't talk about how many years because I don't want to give away Miss Tara's age. We're going to act like she's still just 29. And like our counselors, I didn't put lots and lots of information down because there are so many things that she does. It's hard to fit it inside of those bubbles. She does help us to make sure that the personal and family needs of students are met so that when they come to school, they are able to be successful. And there's a little presentation that will be tacked on at the end about the homeless liaison, and that is what she does there. Hospital homebound is another thing that's in the realm of student services. So far this year, we have had about 29 students who've been on hospital homebound. Hospital homebound just means that a student has a medical or other need that makes it look like they're going to have to be out of school for at least 10 days during the school year. So there's a packet of paperwork that their doctor or their psychiatrist can fill out so that they are then able to have someone from school working with them to provide services to keep them from falling so far behind. That requires a minimum of 3 hours a week, and that is usually a teacher from their school, and those services typically occur outside of the teacher's normal work hours, unless we have some of those wonderful retired folks that are able to take care of those for us during the day. Unfortunately, another thing that falls into our realm is necessary, and we've had some practice in the last few years, is our crisis planning and response. And this is if we have the death of a student or a staff member. And you can imagine how devastating that is within the school for kids and faculty to show up and hear that someone that they care about and know has passed. So from school to district level, we work together to put together plans of response for that so that in the event it does happen, we are able to respond accordingly. Other terms that you might hear associated with our departments: wraparound services, whole child, Title 6B. There's a grocery list of special ed language that I could throw in there about FAPE and least restrictive environment and continuum of service. But if you want to know more about that, you come see me and we'll sit down and we'll talk more about those, because I don't want to hold you here all night long going over every bit of that. There are lots of agencies that we partner with out of student services to make sure that we're doing all we can do. And you see just the ones I could think of that I interact with on a very regular basis listed up there, because like I said, we start services for kids at 3, but somebody else oftentimes has been working with some of those from birth. And then, of course, because we're trying to see these kiddos through to the age of 22, you'll see some other folks on the other side there that we work with to get them where they need to be. And of course, all of this is because we're working to make sure that we have happy, skilled adults who are able to leave us and go forward and take their place in the world. We want them to have beautiful lives, whatever that looks like. It doesn't look the same for everybody. We don't want them to leave us and then just go home to see it. We want them out in the community doing their thing as best they are able to do it. And I put my email up there and the phone number here, so anybody in the audience or on the board that has questions, you are welcome to reach out and we can talk more about what we've talked about from student services. You're not done with me yet, though.
Thank you,
Miss
Dr.
Jenny's going to pull up one more thing. But before I go on to McKinney-Vento, any questions or comments?
I just want to comment and let you know, and what you do know, but I want to tell you publicly how much I respect you and the work that you do for all of our kiddos, leveling the playing field and helping them to be as successful as they can be. Thank you.
We want those W's everywhere we can get them, don't we, Miss Dillon?
Yeah, I want to comment too. That's a big, complicated world, bigger than most people realize. And so you deserve a huge shout out. I know firsthand what a great job you've done and your staff, and I greatly appreciate it.
Well, I don't claim to know everything, but if there are things I don't know, I want to go figure it out.
Which you're phenomenal at, yeah.
All right, then let's talk for just a minute about the McKinney-Vento training. McKinney-Vento is a law that is written to make sure that we are taking care of our students who are experiencing homelessness. Miss Tara Cantrell has done a beautiful job of this for years and years and years. And we do have more kids in our community than you would think who experience homeless. It looks different for people. It might be that their families having to live with another family. It might be that they're living in substandard housing. And sometimes that means kids' lives are turned all topsy-turvy because their families had to uproot and move to the other side of the county. And then we are tasked with making sure we provide some consistency for them. So Mr. Drury, who's not over here today because buses are still on the road, he works with Miss Tara to make certain that those kids get to stay at their home school when and if that is necessary to help with that continuity. There's a little bit of information more up there about that identifying homelessness and the things that go into that. And then those rights under McKinney-Vento. If somebody rolls in to register with us and they don't have that grocery list of things that's out there that we're supposed to ask for as far as an electric bill or some 2 or 3 things that show where you live, we can't go, you come back later. We have to enroll those kids immediately because we don't want them to have a gap in their education. So that is what McKinney-Vento looks like. And again, just like with the other things in student services, it's all about leveling the playing field and making everybody's day as good as we can make it.
Thank you, Dr. Huff.
Thank you.
Board?
So how many of those families, I know a few years back we did a visitation, going out, and I was really amazed at the different locations that would surprise you to be considered homeless.
Mm-hmm.
So roughly, do you know how many are out there now? Because I know some of them that I used to see are not there anymore.
Right. Right now, as far as transportation, we have about 10 children that we have made special transportation arrangements with. I will have to look to see what our total number is. I don't remember that one right off. I'm sorry.
Yeah, because Miss Cantrell, she took us, and there were quite a few during that time.
Yes.
And so I did notice that some of those have been cleared out. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
And that's kind of, to help Dr. Huff, that's kind of a number that keeps doing this because student situations changes. So they do a really good job of keeping up with that. So, thank you, Dr. Huff.
Thank you, Dr. Huff.
Mr. Chair, next item on the agenda is just a SPLOST update for SPLOST. This is the last collections for SPLOST 5, and the collection total for that last collection was $989,288.61. So, any questions? Okay, next item on the agenda is school governance team update, and if Ms. Jenny will pull that up. Of course, school governance team update, we report on the stuff that SGTs are responsible and have the authority to approve fundraisers, field trip requests, and expenditures of federal funds at the school level and facility uses. Blue Ridge had no meetings since the last board meeting. East Fannin had one on February the 5th. You can see the work that they did there. West Fannin, January the 23rd. They only had one approval and quite a bit of notable work. The middle school, quite a few fundraiser requests and field trips, notable work. And then the high school, shorter than normal. And then if anyone is interested, the schools are required to keep minutes of these meetings housed at their schools. Okay?
One question on the SPLOST. We did
Yes,
say
sir.
that was the final collection for SPLOST 5, right?
Yes, sir. That was the last collection of SPLOST 5, excuse me. And of course, again, we were able to collect that last quarter that was a longer extension from what was predicted due to the way it fell.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda is Career Technical and Agricultural Education Proclamation, better known as CTAE. The state of Georgia has requested that each Board of Education proclaims that February be CTAE month. So the state chooses February. We choose toward the end of the year to celebrate all of CTAE because they do so many wonderful things. We want to make sure that we don't miss any of the kids, so we bring them in then. So this will be the proclamation, and of course, the end of the year will be the celebration. So with that said, I would like to invite the board to help me proclaim that February is CTAE month in Fannin County. It's a non-action item, but it is just an awareness and a notification of supporting CTAE. Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is annual board self-assessment. Dr. Roof?
This will be this will be extremely brief. So you have a self-assessment, board members. Some of you have taken it, some have not. A good month to take this is the month of February, and it is extremely important because we will use the results of the self-assessment to help guide future trainings, future board trainings, so on and so forth. So just a reminder for those that have not taken it, again, try to get that done definitely during this month of February, and that way we can move forward with what we need to there.
Okay, and then Dr. Roof, the self-assessment is tied to the criteria that is required for exemplary board, is that correct?
Absolutely. It is one of the requirements for exemplary board, along with all of our local board training that we do. It is a requirement.
Okay. Any questions for Dr. Roof? Comments? Questions, comments, concerns?
Nope.
I got a list of concerns, Dr. Roof, but we'll talk about those later.
No. And then also really quickly for CTAE month, our audio video kids are doing an entire video highlighting all of our CTAE programs. They're gonna publish that video and put it out on social media at the end of the month. So.
Awesome.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, next item on the agenda is to approve the Georgia Department or GDOT State Route 5 project, or the AKA driveway into West Fannin. And of course, during our facilities training the other day, you all were able to look at this when we were looking at facilities and those kind of things. So, but I want Mr. Danner to review again, please.
Yeah, so here's a clean a view of what they're proposing for West Fannin. Go ahead, Miss Jenny. The next page, the yellow. Originally, what was in orange was permanent easement, and what was in yellow was right-of-way. We had some concerns about that because a lot of concerns. What's in yellow there is the existing driveway. So they sent this proposal in. Go ahead, Miss Jenny. Just scroll down to about page 4. Keep going right there. So their proposal for the easement, the right-of-way, and also the fence that was there, they allowed $25,000 to having to tear down the fence and then pay us to put it back up if we choose. The two fixtures are the two monuments, the marquee sign at the top. And again, so their proposal was $118,500. So again, go ahead, Miss Jeannie. We had some concerns, had a meeting with Representative Chastain, Mr. Cole, Ms. Dillard, myself, and 2 members from GDOT. Go ahead, Miss Jeannie. The concerns were, we would ask, number one, could they move the driveway more north towards McKaysville? We asked about the line of sight.